Hey guys, it's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another installment of A Year of Thinking Magically, a video series that we've been doing every morning to help inspire each of us to begin living our best lives. So we invite you to join us on a thoughtful journey toward reclaiming your power and creating a more magical, more fulfilling, more healthy experience of life. And so with that, of course, we want to thank you for liking and subscribing and sharing our videos with those that you think will vibe with us. Let me go ahead and turn the comment section on here. And for those who don't know me, I'm your host, John Michael Salvato. And today's mind shift is going to be something a little out of the ordinary. It's going to be looking at one way in which less can really be more. And it could really just save you and those that you care about a lot of grief and heartache in the years ahead. More on that when we get back. And we're back. So if you're watching this for the first time, welcome. If you're somebody who checks this out every day, we're glad that you could join us again. Now, this morning's mind shift isn't one that I plan to do. In fact, as many of you know, part of my morning process or morning ritual is to spend some quiet time deciding what mind shift I'm going to make that day, what I'm going to engage, and then to talk about it with all of you and share that with you. And my mind was set on what I was going to talk about today, which we'll get to tomorrow. But I had an unsettling experience, and that really brought to the foreground the necessity to maybe make a different shift. So we could say that part of today's mind shift is about being flexible, kind of being in the moment, as we've talked about in previous days. But today, someone who's chosen to stay kind of on the margins of my life, they're not really fully enmeshed in my day-to-day life, don't really know me that well, have never really made an attempt to get to know me that well, decided that because they know how the mind works, that they were more qualified than me to determine who I was talking about in one of my recent posts. Now, naturally, as those sorts of folks tend to do, they assumed that what I posted was all about them. And nothing I could say was going to convince them otherwise. And there was no animosity or hostility in this. It didn't matter that most of the people on my friends list, because they actually engage in meaningful ways in my life and they pay attention to what's going on in my life, actually already knew the real situation that my post was addressing. This person's mind was made up. And so from the outside, they cast, an aspersion, a judgment of what it was that I was talking about. And as a result, they became disappointed. And that's when, after trying to explain the lack of logic in that assumption, I remembered my mentor telling me something. I was probably in my 20s. And he said, John Michael, you can't say the right thing to the wrong person any more than you can say the wrong thing to the right person. So I decided today's mind shift would have to be to remember that sometimes less really is more. Speaking less and listening more is a simple but powerful mind shift that we can make over and over again, something that I could probably remind myself on a daily basis of. And the moment that I gave up trying to reason with somebody who was trapped in an irrational and egocentric manic crisis, I was able to feel genuine compassion for how much they must have been hurting based on the assumptions that they made. And just because they made assumptions that led to their feeling hurt didn't make their hurt less important to me. See, the mindset from which they live their lives The arrogance that presumes we know what another person's intentions are better than they do, it doesn't really matter in the big picture, because if the result of that arrogance, the result of that mindset, the result of the pain and the struggle and the fears that they've had to live with is that right now they're hurting, then really all that should matter is that there's a person who's hurting, and that I have a responsibility to do what I can to alleviate that hurt, to alleviate that suffering. And so this is a mind shift that realizes sometimes being right is less important than making things right for somebody else. It's the mind shift that recognizes that we'll never personally grow if we're always the one talking and never the one listening. And I get it. I mean, it hurts to see people operating from delusional or wounded mindsets. It hurts when we see people setting themselves up for more pain and more suffering. But the best thing that we could do for them isn't to talk to them, it's to listen. And yeah, that made me realize that the very same mind shift that could be applied to this person who made assumptions about my post could also be applied to the person I was actually talking about in my post as well. So the layers of healing that begin to present themselves when we shut up and really start to think are limitless. When people are unwilling to allow us to be there for them, sometimes it's because we're trying to be there in ways that will never connect with their real needs in this moment. We're making an assumption about what they actually need. When we stop and listen, we might discover other pathways that are available for more meaningful connections. And then we can actually help alleviate some of that suffering for that person. Then the healing can begin, because they didn't need someone to tell them what they already know. They needed someone to listen. Think about it. When a performer that you really like drops a new song, what do? Do you ramble on about what you hope the song is or what you hope the song's about, or do you shut up and listen to the song? By listening, we understand the music. We think about the lyrics and we ponder what they might mean. We make a connection, even though we may not personally know that artist. And I think we could approach relationships the same way. That person who's broken for now, whose heart is in pieces, probably doesn't need us to tell them that they can find a healthier relationship. They already know that. But what they might need, perhaps more than anything, is someone to listen to why it's so hard for them to move through the pain right now. And that's going to be the topic of tomorrow's mind shift. But for today, let's remember that sometimes less is more. Less talking, more listening. I hope this has been helpful for you. As we say at the end of every one of these broadcasts, I encourage you to return to the present moment, to allow your past to inform you, to make informed choices about what might happen in the future, but remember that the future isn't here yet. But when we return to the present moment, that's where the power is. When we return to the present moment, that's where the potentiality exists. So remember that you matter. And always remember that the best is yet to come. We'll look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Like I said, tomorrow we'll talk about making that mind shift that concerns moving through the pain. And in the meantime, have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon.